Good afternoon to all the participants. I hope all of you had a heavy lunch. Today we will have a demo session by Dia Labs. That will be the session for the next 2 hours. And today we'll be having the sharing of the feedback links, both the links for today's two sessions, as well as the attendance link also will be posted today. I hand over to my colleague, Ms. Ramya, for introducing the speaker.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, all. So let me introduce our speaker for the afternoon session. Uh, yes. Do you know that Mr. P. Uday Shankar is only Indian recipient of Young Achiever Award 2020? Yes, I feel immense happy to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. P. Uday Shankar. Sir has done his B Instrumentation Engineering from PSG Tech, Coimbatore, and specialized in robotics from the University of South Australia. Thereon pursued engineering design from the University of Hull. During his college days, he has won 14 lakhs only as prizes and hold to his credit numerous national awards, some being from National Instruments, Texas Instruments, Aricent, Accenture, and Yago. During his tenure abroad, he has completed 3 projects and received a letter of appreciation for the same. His passion for teaching and skill of innovation led him on the path to make children future ready. He founded Do It Yourself Academy, a marvel aimed at offering a comprehensive lab experience to learn, understand, and implement concepts for students to develop expertise in robotics, 3D printing, industrial automation, AI, and IoT. Dia's Women Entrepreneurship has been awarded the most promising business for women, Best Futuristic Education Company Award, and Excellence in Robotics Education Award. Mr. Uday is an engineer by profession, educator by heart, and an entrepreneur driven by passion. His ambition is to build a global education enterprise focused on making students future ready. Let me introduce the next speaker for the session. Um, that is him, sir. Mr. Francis Regan graduated from NUS with an MTech degree in software engineering. His journey into 3D printing started with Pirate 3D, FDM-based 3D printer startup in Singapore. Post his association with Pirate 3D, Regan led the firmware development for another 3D printer manufacturing company, Structo PVT Limited, Singapore, who specialize in making SLA-based 3D printers. He later co-founded a company called Ionic 3D 3DP Singapore. Together, they researched and brought up a very unique style of 3D printer based on Scott Russell straight line mechanism for which he holds patents. Over a year later, Ionic 3DP India was set up for manufacturing 3D printers in India. Based on the needs of the market, the team has diversified and they are working on several robotics and automation solutions for several leading industries, including a Fortune 100 company. He has very good proficiency in several programming language, and he has a strong passion for hardware, electronic, and open source project. I welcome you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the wonderful introduction. So now, hi everyone, Uday here. So before we start off, I would like all of you to be active on chat. So I'll be asking some really quick questions. So the first question which I have for you is talking about IoT in healthcare. Now, is healthcare only one very specific thing which we can touch, feel, and see? Or does healthcare also encompass something we cannot touch and see, which we can only feel? What do you think? Is healthcare only which you can touch and feel, or does healthcare go beyond something which you can not physically encompass or physically give an attribute to? What is healthcare? I'll make it all the more simplified. Is healthcare only physical, or is it something beyond physical? So I will be asking a lot of questions like this in between the session also. So this will make the session very interactive and interesting for all of us. So please use the chat section and you can please give us your answers. So the question again, I'm just repeating it for you. So is healthcare only physical or is it beyond physical? Thank you, Lavanya. So now, let us take into consideration an average person's life. Now, we'll start this session with a small story. I'm going to start sharing the screen for you. So I hope this is visible to all of you. Yes. Thank you. Now, I'm going to tell you a small story. Okay. Now, this is a story of two people, Raju and Roja. Okay. So now, Raju is someone who's from Chennai, Tamil Nadu, and Roja is someone who's from Bangalore, Karnataka. Now, these two are working in IT together, and then post knowing each other for some time, they decide to get married. Now, as always, somebody who's in Bangalore, if they have to come to Chennai, the first thing which they would always complain is about the climate. I don't like this, I don't like that, it's too sweaty, and all that. So, this is the place where the mental trauma starts to begin. So, over here, so what is it that can be done? So, like we discussed first, healthcare has two different aspects. One is the physical health, second is the mental health. Mental health actually plays a huge aspect or a part in making sure that the physical health is in place. So, when a person is going through mental trauma, oh my God, if I go home, my wife is again going to pick a fight with me. We are not like the way we used to be before. So, in this case, do you think IoT can help? So I'm going to be switching screens really fast just to see what responses we're getting from you. So do you think IoT can help over here? Okay. So over here, if you see, the first and foremost, so the climate we cannot change. The climate we can create in an artificial manner. So by the time she comes home from work, the ACs can be turned on. So when she enters home, it will be very pleasant and cold. So this is the first step. So with IoT, you can control devices from anywhere in the world. And second, the next phase, IoT in terms of motherhood. So to make motherhood safe and simple, so IoT can be brought into place. First and foremost being right from the start of pregnancy, the progress of the child, child's health, all that can be monitored through IoT. And the second phase in terms of the child's safety. So you put your baby in the cradle. So is your baby crying? Is your baby in the cradle? And is it safe around the cradle? Is somebody coming around it? Somebody who's coming when you're not there? So all that information you can get through IoT. Next, the third phase, the safety of the entire family. Over here, what happens? Now let's just say you're at office and you get an alert saying that gas is leaking. So wouldn't you be tensed? Now this immediately you can switch on the exhaust in your house and send out all the gas and make sure your family is safe. Similarly, when you're out with your family on a vacation, you can make sure that nobody is entering your house without your permission. If a window is opened or a door is opened when you're not there, you can call the cops and alert yourself. And the final phase in terms of old age, when both have grown old together, So in old days, this is a position where even if you go to the restroom, your family is worried. So what if you slip and fall? So what if you faint? So what if suddenly your BP shoots up and you faint? So all these are things that the family is worried on a regular basis when you're old. But by simply wearing IoT devices, no matter what the age, no matter where your family is, can always be rest assured that they're being watched and you get the status of where they are and how they are, all that to your mobile phone. And this is possible only through IoT. And how we can do this through IoT is what we are going to be seeing in today's session. Once again, Uday here from the Do It Yourself Academy. We're into making students future ready. First and foremost, not just healthcare, whatever you take in the world, IoT is there. So a very simple way is something, IoT is something which can be built with AI, with support system by anybody. So this is an assistant robot for medical health, reception, all that, built by one of our students. So today, if you see IoT, it is there in all the aspects. Now, in so many years, IoT has always been there. But what are the three main parameters? What we as engineers are seeing that IoT is going to revolutionize the future. The first and foremost, like all of us say, the first of the computers were as big as one room. But today, your phone is more powerful than the computer that landed a satellite or a rover on moon, right? So here, that is the way computing devices have become faster, more efficient, and cheaper. Now you get an IoT controller for as less as even 500 rupees. But the same thing, the same spec before was not so easily available, but it was also costlier. Second thing right now is there are so many IDEs, interactive development environments, which are making coding very, very easy and integration with lot of APIs for cloud or AI, all that has been simplified. So the hardware support right now is phenomenal. And the best part is the fundamental fabric of IoT is internet, which is data. Now we are in an era of data where everybody is saying, I'll give you free data, free this much, free that much. So earlier, I had to pay almost 300 to 500 rupees for 1 GB of data. Now today, I'm paying less than 20 rupees for 1 GB of data, which means the cost has reduced by 25 times for just the data, which is the base of IoT. Now, when these three parameters in place, building IoT products has become much, much simpler and efficient. Now, to make an IoT project or an application or deploy a device, you need four main fundamental building blocks. The first and foremost is your devices and endpoints. Now, what is this device? For example, let's just say I'm building an IoT based patient heart health monitoring system. So over here, I would, let's say I'm attaching a device, maybe as a chain or I'm attaching it directly through straps to the heart of the patient. Now over here, if I'm monitoring using a sensor to monitor the ECG. So this is my endpoint. The point from which I'm collecting my data, that is my endpoint. This sensor for the ECG data. Next, from over here, this sensor by itself cannot give me any direct data or information or values. So it just gives me a voltage or a current. Now I have to make sure that from this voltage and current, I infer some information like what is the current phase, is it, what is the heartbeat, is it, what is it, so uh, is it going to be resistole, diastole, what phase are we in? So the PQRS, the wave, so where are we right now? So when over here, what we're going to see is, now this particular information versus time, our IoT controller is going to see, measure the voltage, and this particular controller is going to be connected to the internet. So this is the device, and together they form the endpoint. Next is the device management. Now, there might be hundreds of patients in a hospital, and let's say from these 100, you're worried about the heart condition of 20 patients. Now, every patient is going to have one such device or the endpoint, and all these devices are going to communicate to a standard device management protocol or a central hub. This hub is something we call as a central server. It's going to receive all the data from all the sites. It's going to collect the information, and it has been stored. Now on my server, I can run my algorithms to process the data, to separate it, to monitor the level of criticality, and then decide who needs immediate care. And if I see a condition which is critical, immediately I can alert the respective team who can go to the patient. Now this will remove the requirement of one person being there at short notice, and also the continuous health, I can just see it on my phone. So right now I do understand there are devices that monitoring the health and are giving inputs to the doctors, but what if all that can be something so portable that even from home we can get the condition of the patient continuously, and if something goes wrong, immediately we can send an ambulance to rescue the patient. Next comes the filtering process, which we just discussed in terms of what happens if this happens. Now, if I'm seeing an incident which is critical, immediately I'm going to do this. So that is the filtering, which helps me with the event handling and the notifications part. And then finally, we come to the user management part. So if the healthcare has to go to the patient directly at home, multiple things have to happen. First and foremost, the admin has to be able to see all the data monitor. In case of emergency, the doctor has to be intimated, he needs to get a report. And if the patient has to come, it needs to have been informed to the ambulance team who has sent an ambulance. Location has to be there. So there are multiple roles that come in when healthcare has to be delivered. So based on the platform on the server, we can have access management through which every person can decide to which part of data can they have access to, and from that data, what is the decision that they can make. So these are the four fundamental blocks of building an IoT based solution for healthcare. Now, in IoT itself, there are two layers. The first one, which we call as the IoT, it is the bigger picture, which basically is the Internet of Things. Now this has everything, the physical objects, the control internet, your controllers, devices, your sensors, which can be monitored and controlled. And like we just discussed about, there is this server on the cloud to which all the data is going to, which is your web, the actual website that is there in the cloud, your web of things. Now this web of things is basically your standards, your layers, whatever is running on your cloud server, the fabric of communication comes from things. So to give you a simple example of how a college student can make a simple project with this. Now this, if you take the PIR sensor for security, say if somebody is entering the room. Second, what is the room humidity? Is the patient comfortable? Room temperature. So these three, say in an ICU, if you keep, and if you see you're monitoring the room in terms of the comfort of the patient, this is your sensor, right? Now, next, the server we spoke about here in this case, we are considering it to be an Raspberry Pi, which is a local server. Now this Raspberry Pi will be connected to internet through which everybody can access the data of what is happening. So what will happen is, let's say I'm the admin person who has to take care of all the rooms. So on my app, I can see what is the temperature, what is the humidity, what is the condition of stay in each room. If someone enters a room, I get a notification, then I can open the feed of that room and see who has entered. And all this data is also locally stored in a Raspberry Pi for each room, so that, let's just say internet is cut or power is cut or whatever, the data will be still stored in the Raspberry Pi. And when the internet is back, when the power is back, it can publish it back to the internet, and this person can get all the data. Now, phase two. Here, now I found out that somebody has come to the room. Here we have the actuators. So this person cannot be sitting on the phone 24/7 seeing what is happening, what notifications are coming. What if the phone is on mute or on silent or whatever? The notification will not come. And there's no guarantee that this person is going to be there at the point of help all the time. She might go around, anything might happen. So over here, what we'll do is, now for example, let's just say somebody has entered the room. We have the actuators. And over here, for example, it is two LEDs, LED 1 and LED 2. Now, if somebody has entered the room, in that case, the sensor is identified using the passive infrared sensor. So the PIR sensor has identified. Next, what happens is the Raspberry Pi gets the data. and through Raspberry Pi internet and internet to the actual actuator near the admin or the nurse's cabin. And over here, the red light in LED1 will glow. Then they can switch on the phone and see who has entered through the camera and might be fit in the room, for example. Or outside, when they're entering itself, you'll get the notification. So you can have an image coming to your phone as well. So that will happen. Now, the second case, let's say the room AC is switched off or it's getting too hot in the room. Immediately, you'll have notification on LED number 2. So this person can go there, see what is wrong, AC is not working or AC is being switched off, because the patient might not be in a position to stand up or sit down and switch on the AC. So in a very simple process, with just a couple of sensors, few actuators, Raspberry Pi as your local server, and here you can actually fit in an ESP module. This is an Wi-Fi control as something in between. So this particular data can be relayed to the Raspberry Pi. So what you can always have is you can have a local Wi-Fi network for the entire floor. And over here, what can happen is you can switch on one Raspberry Pi floor, and these controllers will talk to the Raspberry Pi per floor. In this way, you can reduce the cost of infrastructure as well. This is one use case. Next, there's so many big players who have come up with a lot of use cases in IoT. So all these links I'll be happy to share with you with Deepa ma'am, who will in turn share it with you. Meanwhile, you can always take a screenshot of this to see what is being done across the world in multiple fields. Like we saw the Web of Things, there's so many protocols and layers that come in place. The first and foremost are your network things. Now, these are the actual physical endpoint devices that are there in your system. It can be your sensors, just your QR codes, which you scan to get data of your person. Third, your controllers, then your communication protocols, and all that come into the physical. And next, in terms of access, here we're talking about how these devices are communicating with the web, or what is the communication protocol like HTTP or MQTT. These are two protocols which we use for communication between the devices. For example, the case which we saw, I have an ESP module that is my central point for that particular room, and then I have a Raspberry Pi which is my central point for that particular floor. Over here, what happens when the MQTT protocol is used? So it makes sure that in the fastest manner, the information is conveyed to the Raspberry Pi. So the information relay happens to the access layer. Next is the find. Now, coming from the top down approach, the bottom up is basically sensor, ESP, the controller, the Wi-Fi controller, Raspberry Pi, the cloud, and then your mobile app. Coming the other way around, mobile app, cloud, Raspberry Pi, your controller, and the sensor. So your mobile app has to come to the end point. So need to find out where the device is, which room is that. So all that happens to the find layer. And then coming to the share layer. For this, there is authentication, delegation. Now there are two different ways. Now, there are people who want to share stuff on social network. For example, let's just say I have a pedometer attached, or I'm wearing a pedometer watch. So this I want to every day after I finish running, automatically how many steps I've taken, how much I've run, has to be published to Facebook, for example. That can be done. So that is where the share layer comes in. And second, authentication, delegation, API tokens, all that. Here, what happens is, now let's just say, for example, here in this particular case which we took, here we are having multiple user roles. In this comes the authentication part, wherein we decide who has access to what level of information, and finally making or taking the action. So IFTTT protocol, for example, if this then that, then system integration. So what can happen directly without you intervening is the compose layer. So these are the different layers when you build an IoT project that can come into the play. Next, what do we have from the biggest players? So IoT is the future, no doubts there. And that's why you see everybody is getting into IoT, be it Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Samsung. Everybody wants a piece of it. And these are, for example, for your reference, what each person is doing for their own products. For the cloud part, Google has their own Google Cloud or Nest. Microsoft has Azure. Amazon has launched AWS IoT. Apple has their own cloud. And Samsung has the Arctic cloud. Now, the communication protocols, Google has made their own. MQTT is open source based. And Microsoft has built their own, and Apple has their own as well. Network protocol basically is in what mode of communication. So we have RF, Zigbee, Z-Wave, Bluetooth, Bluetooth low energy, we have Wi-Fi, and in future we might have Wi-Fi based on light. So these are the communication protocols which people are using right now. And finally, the operating system for the end devices. So what are they working on? So until this point, do we have any questions? If you have any questions, you can please leave them in the chat box and I'll be happy to take them. So until this point, if you have any questions, please leave your question in the chat.
If your chat box is not working, you can straight away unmute and speak. Sir, I
It's
think
a very
they,
good
they
explanation.
don't have. Okay, ma'am, please proceed. Yes.
Yes. Sir, it's a very nice explanation, sir. Just kindly use a pointer, sir, while
Okay, ma'am, no
presenting.
worries, I can do that.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. So anything else? Any other questions? Sure. Now let's proceed. Now, when we deploy an application in IoT, there are three ways in which you can deploy an application. The first and foremost is called your direct integration pattern. Second is through a gateway, and third is your cloud. Okay. Now, WOT is nothing but web of things, the ones that we saw, the protocols and the layers. First and foremost is where we have the thing, the web of things API is running on the controller. That is the direct integration pattern. So what happens over here is, now there is client and there is server, correct? There are two things that happens when some data transfer has to happen, the client and the server. In this case, the cloud becomes the client and the thing becomes the server. So here in the ESP which we use, which is the Wi-Fi controller, it is also, there is a two modes, it's called as dual modes of operation. The first mode is called as ESP as client and second mode is called as ESP as server. So when that happens, when ESP is the server, the ESP, the controller actually creates a Wi-Fi network. So instead of connecting to a Wi-Fi hotspot, which actually should be the case if it's a client, the reverse will happen. It creates a Wi-Fi and then whichever has to connect to that Wi-Fi will connect. So if this becomes the server, the API will run on the thing. Now this we use when the application is very, very small and light. Otherwise, what happens is the capacity, the processing capacity, the memory in the thing is quite low. If it gets overloaded, there will be chance of failure. So this is used in applications which is very, very light. Second is usually the most common when it comes to say home automation or medical. Here what happens, there are many things. In between there is a gateway. This is the exact example or the pattern what we just discussed, in which the Raspberry Pi is your gateway. The Web of Things API is running on your Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi is connected to multiple Wi-Fi controllers, which are the things which are connected to all the sensors. Now this Raspberry Pi is now connecting to the cloud, which is storing all the information. And here the processing can happen in the Raspberry Pi itself. So that just in case, even if the net is cut off, the data is still safe in the gateway. And in case of home automation example, what happens is, let's just say internet is down. If your gateway is in place, using the local network itself, you can control all the devices within the office. That is the gateway integration pattern. And then finally, we come to a cloud integration pattern where there is no gateway. Straight away, all the data goes to the cloud. And here, you see the clouds are really costly because they need to have huge data handling capacity and processing capacity as well. So all the Web of Things APIs will run on this. A simple example of this might be there are many internet cameras in which all the data stream is taken to the cloud and the processing happens in the cloud as this person come. So identification of a particular person through multiple cameras across the entire premises can be done in this particular way, in which here the thing is nothing but a Wi-Fi camera. The feed is sent to the cloud. So over here, the Web of Things API is running on the cloud, and this usually is very, very costly because the only thing or the costliest thing in the entire architecture is the cloud. Depending on how much you use and how frequently you use, how much you pay will vary to a great extent. Next is how we integrate these. So I will not go too much in the technical. So direct integration, gateway, in which through the gateway you can connect with a Zigbee or Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. And finally, cloud is where you work in a huge network, maybe across a city or whatever. Now, device and data. These are two very important but very different things. So devices over here are your endpoints, and data over here is what you get out of the endpoints. For example, sensor is your device and data is the information you get from the sensor. Now all this from across, it has to come to your cloud, and this enables the exchange and collection. And over here, the fundamental fabric again is the internet. And in data, what this slide is going to have prominence of is, if you're going to store all the data in the cloud, your costing is going to be huge. So before you store the data, you can always filter the data. For example, I have 100 patients in the hospital, and every patient has his own ECG sensor attached to the heart, and then there is a Wi-Fi controller, and then there's a gateway, and then there is my cloud. So in the gateway level itself, you can run a code, an algorithm application that says if the heartbeat is falling below this level, and then you store the data on the cloud saying that at this point from this device, this is the heartbeat that is recorded. So now what happens? You have removed the data from the remaining 99 different controllers. So your level of access and usage of the cloud reduces, which reduces your cost of running the application. Now, the sensors and actuators, there are so many out there that you can't actually put a count. So based on whatever your application is, there's so many to choose from. And the best part is you can always build a hybrid version. For example, there's a separate humidity sensor, there's a separate temperature sensor, but there is one sensor that gives both temperature and humidity. So like that, you can always go for a multiple combination. There is no limit, but the only thing here is for one application itself, you get multiple sensors. For example, if I want to check if somebody is entering my hospital room, so I have the choice of choosing starting from, let's say, an IR proximity sensor, IR obstacle sensor, then I can have a PIR sensor, I can have a laser line sensor, I can have an ultrasonic sensor. So like that, there are almost 5 different choices of every sensor and actuator which you can make. Now, as an engineer, as a person who's handling the project, so your role would be to choose what is the right one for your project. So please be very careful with the choice of sensor and actuator, because that will change the entire outcome of your project and the application, because in healthcare, it is life or death, which is most critical. And second is, even in terms of actuator and in the sensors, there is operating voltage, operating temperature, chances of failure based on the quality and the pricing. All these will change. So please be very careful with your choice. Next, when it comes to IoT and embedded systems for healthcare, there are 4 main parameters which you'll have to look at. So the endpoint devices, we had 4 that are different. In terms of your project, application, your product, 4 main things. First is the bandwidth. Let's just say in the metro like Chennai, your internet might be very good, you can have huge bandwidth. But for your application to be successful, let's say you need to work it even in a village, where the bandwidth might not be high. So can your controller or your device work with low bandwidth? So even if it requires, let's say a Raspberry Pi can work in both low and high bandwidth. In case of low bandwidth, you need to decide what data you are sending has been filtered is of the lowest size before you send. Second, in terms of power. Now, let's just say I'm building a patient monitor and I need my controller to be mounted on the patient body over here. I cannot say that just like your phone, you connect your device to the plug point and sit next to the bed always. The patient cannot move. If he moves, then what happens? The power gets disconnected, and you know what alert we'll get? No heartbeat. So power is gone. The device will say that patient is gone. So power is very critical. So for the patient to stay free for longer time, so these devices need to be powered for longer time without being connected to a charger or adapter. So there has to be an inbuilt battery in the medical devices. And for these batteries, definitely there's a size, there's restriction as to how much of a battery you can put in. So what will decide how long it can stay without power is how much power your device is consuming. Now there is low energy devices which work with under 3.3 volt. People are trying to cut down how much is being consumed in terms of voltage and current on regular basis, primarily to ensure that a device can be out there for a much longer time. Next is size. Now, would you prefer something like a simple car key on your body, or do you like something like a tennis ball on your body? Obviously, when the size is smaller, this all the more comfortable for you, right? So this can be achieved when you're going for the devices of your choice, which have been integrated to VLSI, ULSI. Now, it's the integration level is gone so huge, the size has come down by such an extent that people can go about without even people noticing that you're wearing something of that sort. So size of a device is the next matter. But in some cases with smaller size, the cost becomes higher. In some cases with smaller size, the cost becomes lower. Again, based on your application and your device. And the final is the management as to how it is going to work. So how many protocols, who's having the access, and what is the communication channel. So for example, direct cloud, or is it going to be through gateway? So what are we going to do? These are the four important concepts and concerns which you should keep in mind when you're devising your application in IoT. So these are the protocols which we use for IoT for communication. So I am a fan of MQTT. So I always follow MQTT, but there are people who still follow HTTP. It's quite old and tested. So people are quite comfortable with this. MQTT is the latest one. I wouldn't say latest, but it is new compared to HTTP. So over here, what happens is, even in low bandwidth areas, it works really fast. It works in PubSub transfer way, and it can have many to many topology. So makes your communication channel much faster. And here it uses a broker, which is good for IoT applications. But over in HTTP, there is no broker. Okay. So when a message is being relayed, the broker comes in between. So between the publisher and the subscribers, the broker is there. So the broker can store the information and keep sharing. So based on as and when it comes. So the breakdown for connectivity, how it works. First and foremost, we set up the device and we get it running. Second, coming to storage, we can use SQL or NoSQL file storage mechanism to store the data. Third is develop an interface, a front end as to how the user will interact with the product or the application. It can be a web app, it can be an Android app, it can be an iOS app, it can be anything. So the front end, like the graphs, data entry and all that, will make it easier for the client to use. So that is the developer any devices part. And finally, when it comes to the APIs or scalability, so if you make a reusable API for any number of devices, so API is nothing but application peripheral interface. So here what you do is you make one particular software piece of code, and this you can use for multiple devices. So you're making an app for Android and iOS. If you have an API which can integrate with this for your cloud directly, so here the data transfer becomes fast. So the product managers, they build APIs and they release it so that anybody can integrate for anything. That's how it works. So this will ensure that the scalability, reliability, and portability is there, and security because the data transfer is happening through your API. So you can control what information is being sent and received and not the customer. So it makes the complete project and application very safe, reliable, and scalable. So this is the second part. So if any doubts at this point, then please ask us. Friends, if you don't have any doubts, we proceed further. If you have any doubts, please feel to use the chat box, or you can, like Deepa Mama suggested, and please unmute yourself and ask us the questions. Now we are almost halfway through. So meanwhile, Deepa Ma'am, if you can please share the link I shared with you. I would like for our participants to see a couple of things.
Yes, so
you can
I will
please
share
that.
it in the WhatsApp group. That'd be fine.
Sure, ma'am. Please you can share with them. I'll
Okay.
share it in the chat as well right now.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So I'm just sharing the link with you all. So there's a run link which I've shared with you. You can please click on that. Please click that only from your mobile phones and not from your desktops or your laptops. So this is an application which works with AI and IoT for object recognition and taking decisions. So over here, it's a simple web app which we built. So if you see, I'm not sure if my screen is visible. So right now, my phone is pointed towards my Mac. And over here in the bottom, if you see, desktop computer is what it says. And the match score or the accuracy is about 58% accuracy. Now I'm turning it towards this. Now looking at the light, it's thinking that it's a projector, and it's also thinking it's a loudspeaker, and it can be a system. So it can be loudspeaker, speaker unit. So this is the kind of probability. So next, I'm going to bring in my water bottle. So it says water bottle with an accuracy of almost 70%. So why am I showing this with you? So now with IoT, you can take a decision that says, what am I going to do if so and so thing happens? Now let's say I bring in my AC remote. Remote control, remote with an accuracy of almost 40%. So with IoT, what happens over here is when I see a remote with my IoT, I can say switch on AC. So instead of me doing it directly, I can just show a remote. Or let's just say I show my room spray or something like that. So here it can tell me what it is. You can say make decisions. So based on what object which we are showing or what the application finds out, you can make decisions. For example, an application of this particular tool in real time would be something like this. Now, the complete room is powered by IoT. If a doctor comes in, so by identifying the doctor, if it's going to be, let's just say doctor is coming to examine the patient, so automatically all lights will be on, AC temperature is controlled, TV will be off. Next, let's just say somebody is bringing them food, a food cart is coming in, or they're bringing in serve the food. So similarly, in that case, lights can dim, fan can reduce the speed, AC can be switched off, TV can be on. So we can do multiple decision making based on what object which we are identifying. So you can please try that out at your convenience. I'm going to share my screen again. Now to help you understand what sort of code goes into building an application like that. So this is the coding which we have done. So for building the website, the web interface, we've used CSS, HTML, CSS for the web, the integration part. And for the backend part, we've used Java for video classification. And this is the kind of code it looks on our platform, which is called Runlink. And when you identify something, it looks something like this. And based on this, you can decide and you can make decisions. So that was a simple project or something nice which you can experience and see what is really possible. So what I would like to highlight over here is this application is built with code something as simple as this. So counter to the popular belief or the belief, the thought process that it might be hard, it is actually not. It is very, very easy to build your own applications in AI and IoT. So this is with our Australian partnership which we've developed. So the platform is called Runlink. You can please go ahead and try build projects of your own. So it is free to use. So you can try out all your applications with this. So something small for you to go ahead and try. I hope that was a good session for you to experience what it is. Now we'll go back to our presentation as to what more is possible. So as a mentor, as a teacher, as a person who's going to be working with students across the country, the first question which you'll definitely get is, where do I begin? So first, here there are multiple industries. Choose the industry. Over here, it's going to be healthcare. In terms of healthcare, this is the holistic approach. So this can actually be broken down into multiple parts. For example, medical supplies, stocking, patient records, patient support, then monitoring the vitals. There are many parts of IoT in healthcare wherein you can connect smart devices to existing machines and make them smart. So you got to decide which part you want to take up. So IoT in healthcare is an ocean. So there's so many applications to it. So decide as a mentor, as a guide, which part of the complete pie you want to focus for that particular team of students. That is step number one. Now, say you've taken a simple example. In this case, it's going to be about over here. If you actually see, so to make say diabetes instead of say pricking with the strip every time. So I had a batch of students who came up and said, I would like to make a non-invasive diabetic measurement tool with pulse oximeter and I think blood pulse oxy was for oxygen. I'm sorry, I'm not from a medical background. I'm just trying to do my best. So that, and second, it can monitor your blood and blood oxygen resistance pulse oxy. And then next over here, your heartbeat monitoring. So based on a combination of these two, that is your blood oxygen level, your heartbeat level, they're trying to come up with an algorithm that can project the level of diabetes. If I'm not wrong, that was the kind of project they had come up with. So over here, we would help you provide them. So we did not get into the algorithm part. That is not our expertise. Our expertise is more into sensors, data management, and IoT. We're not experts in the medical line, but we do work with experts in medical to build products based on what inputs they give us. So now over here, let's say this smart device, which is the watch. It's an IoT enabled smart watch, which has the power to connect a cord with the pulse oxy, which can power the pulse oxy based on the charge that is there in the watch. Now this data plus this data, this we do not connect to internet because otherwise you will have to add a SIM to this and then you have to make it up to internet. To avoid all that headache, so what we have done is, so over this will connect via Bluetooth through your app on your phone. Your phone is in turn connected to the cloud. So the data from this, your heartbeat rate, how many steps you walked, and your pulse oxy level. So all this will be sent to your mobile phone. So over here, you can have a data display and also decision making. And then from here, rewards like giving you stars, appreciation, all that can come in from the community. And from here, data is sent to the cloud, processed on the cloud, and then can be sent to your hospital for the management as to see how are your records. And meanwhile, even the doctor can see how well you're doing. So this is one more simple application, just one application in the entire medical, which can be one project. So something like this, we can take up multiple projects. So one more over here would be like making all your existing devices smart. For example, if there's an ECG machine, you can connect an extension to it. You can add and Wi-Fi enabled controller to it and do data transfer from here to local, then to cloud. Again, enable smart decision making. You see over here, this is being placed on the chest, and this by itself is an IoT enabled device. So direct from here, we can take the data. So instead of having a machine like this, it can be made portable like this. And then finally, there are multiple levels. So over here, you can take it as the one in which say blood sugar, BP, heartbeat. So any case based on a base identification parameter. So identification parameter can be anything. Maybe is the person falling down suddenly? So simply by having my watch or my phone using the gyro and the accelerometer, I can see if the person is falling too fast, right? Then it means something bad has happened. Immediately I can inform and I can get the ambulance. Otherwise, now here if you see over here, using this, we have found out that let's say the blood sugar is higher, the doctor is getting in touch, and then the pharmacy is getting orders saying that you're taking medicine. So immediately based on the doctor's advice, he can deliver the medicine to you. And once the medicine you take, you can again verify what is the level of the blood sugar, and then it is conveyed back to the doctor. So this complete chain can be made simple, fast, efficient, 100% monitored, fail safe through IoT and integrating all the software applications to it. And then there are a lot of open source resources where you can start your development from. So Arduino is your embedded basic hardware embedded controller. Second is your Raspberry Pi, which can be your IoT device itself, or it's actually a processor, but Arduino and NodeMCU are controllers. So the capacity of your Raspberry Pi is pretty good. So there's some people who even run that as their personal computers. That is also possible. So that is the capacity of Raspberry Pi. So you can use an Arduino or a NodeMCU for based on your application. So you can have a combination of both. The best part about Raspberry Pi is these two communicate easily and faster with MQTT, and you can actually connect an Arduino to a Raspberry Pi and extend all the sensors to it. So the Raspberry Pi can be the central one, and for decision making implementation, you can use either of these. So if you just need one Wi-Fi point, I would recommend Raspberry Pi with Arduino. If you want multiple devices across different places, the sensor or the output device with NodeMCU connected to Raspberry Pi. So this can be your entire device architecture, and this are based on open source platforms supported by foundations. So this will make your cost of project much lesser, and also the best part over here is the cost is less, and also the resources that are available are very good. Being open source, there's so many people who are putting up the projects on internet with a step-by-step guide to do the projects. So if you just Google, if you go to YouTube or GitHub or anything, you will find so many files and communities to support what is being done, and is being quickly adopted by industry also. So this is how a smart city is looking like, and in IoT hacking is also possible. And take a screenshot of this to see how different devices that are supposed to be highly secure have been hacked. So here it's all about communication protocol, encryption, and data security. So hacking in IoT is also just letting. So it's very important how you encrypt, transfer, and store. So a typical attack would be something like this. So let's say somebody can switch on your car. They can high capacity insulin pumps. So insulin pumps that are powered by IoT can be triggered from online itself. And your house, if it's a smart house, people can just unlock the door if they hack into your IoT system. So anything is possible. So if your protocol and your architecture is not secure, all the benefits can become disadvantages. So please be very mindful of that. So be very careful. So the future of IoT is very simple. So now we are over here. Next, all the data. So IoT is the point which is helping you get all the data from across the world to one place. And then with that data, you'll use the big data algorithms to capture, analyze, store, and come to different sets of data which are useful for making decisions. Now this data is sent to your AI algorithm. Based on this data, your AI will take decisions to what has to happen. So these are the sequence, and this is the future of which IoT is going to go towards, and the applications are going to grow. So there are many applications again. So this are hyperlinks which I can share with you. So the takeaways for you is IoT is already here, and there's a huge scope across in which a lot of resources and APIs for all industries. There are standards that are helpful, which are secure and reliable, which can be used for consumers and business. So the next thing about internet is IoT, and IoT is changing the way we interact with devices and people. So IoT is a great opportunity for all of us to be in right now, because that is going to transform the future, and it is only useful and makes sense if it is done properly. A half-baked IoT device is useless and dangerous. So always make sure applications are secure and to the point. A small joke for you to all take away with. So if you see this guy is saying, I think my Nest smoke alarm is going off. Google AdWords just pitched me a fire extinguisher and offered for a temporary housing. So if anybody got this joke, you can actually unmute and tell us what you understood. So what do you guys? So if you understood the funny part in this, you can please share that with us. It's a joke for information. Just take a minute, you can just think about it, and you can just answer. Okay, let me break it down for you. So basically, Nest is Google's version of IoT, that Web of Things architecture. So here, he had a smoke sensor in his house. So here he's saying that my Nest smoke sensor alarm is going off. So I think it is going off. So now what has happened? So when his Nest sensor alarm goes off, Google has found out that there is a smoke in his house. So immediately what Google has done, Google has started showing him ads to buy a fire extinguisher to put off the fire, so that he can buy it and give it to his house to put off the fire. And parallelly, since his house is going to be burned down, which Google also knows, Google is sending him an offer for temporary housing. So based on your data from your house, Google is able to find out what you need, and through Google's leverage through Gmail, through Google Chrome and all that, they can sell stuff of what you need. So this is an application of IoT, big data and AI all coming to one shot to make sales personalized with all the data all the big players are collecting from us. In terms of the industry, this is the future, and here you need to make sure that you're motivating the students to take up the future tech in terms of IoT, AI, 3D printing, robotics and automation, and renewable energy. Okay, so when you do this, there's a huge scope in India, because we're third lowest in the world in terms of production cost. In terms of infra, we are on second, and we have USD 5 billion worth of startups. And in the next 10 years, we're going to be having almost 500 million youth who will be coming to the job industry. So we need to make sure that they're empowered with all the future tech, so that they'll be able to take up what's best for them, and we can take care of the growing industry demands. So IoT, AI, 3D printing, and big data, these are things which are the future, and this is where children have to work towards. So after this, it gives me immense pleasure that to share with you. So I have my good friend, a fellow entrepreneur, a techpreneur actually. So Mr. Regan is going to show next on how an IoT powered application is saving lives at a lower cost. So next, you're going to be seeing how Mr. Regan and team, with very little help from us, they have built an IoT-powered smart ventilator that during the times of COVID has saved so many lives, and now it is going up for the approval from the government. So Regan is somebody who's absolutely passionate about technology, and he gives his heart and soul to everything he does. He's done his masters from NUS. He built his own startup over there, and after that, he's built 3D printers, and now they're being built in India itself with all his R&D from Singapore. So he's based out of Singapore, and now he's in India right now, working on indigenizing, and he's back here to work on smart ventilators powered by IoT so that he can do what he does best, saving lives with technology. And it has elements of IoT, 3D printing, data analytics, and AI all come together to build a smart device. So before we go to that, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take them for you. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your patient listening. So I hope I was able to add some value on how IoT can be used in the different architectures and what we can do with IoT. If you have any doubts, you can please ask us. And next, we'll go on to Mr. Regan to see how a smart ventilator is saving lives.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes,
myself Justin. I have a question. In a computer processor that we have multiple cryptographic algorithms are there, yes,
correct.
for security. So same algorithm, whether we can run in the Raspberry Pi.
So Raspberry Pi, so basically there are two types of applications and protocols. So one that runs, so for example, let's say you want a communication protocol. So between Raspberry Pi and the cloud, there are standard communication protocols. So on the Raspberry Pi, you can have Python, PHP, anything that you choose to write what decision making and what information to be sent. But yes, the communication protocols are standard for the computer and the IoT devices. For example, both computer and Raspberry Pi can talk through HTTP, which is a very standard and being already used.
Okay. Actually, my question is actually the computer it's have a huge computing power, but
Correct.
Raspberry Pi it have when compared to computer it is very less. That's
Correct.
what I am asking. Can we use the same kind of algorithms inside the Raspberry Pi or not?
No, sir. Computation power, say for example, Raspberry Pi is one type of device, but you have so many devices with higher power. So instead of choosing a Raspberry Pi, you can choose a different device for the application. First option. Second option, you can buy the cloud server with higher capacity of processing. You can send all the data to the cloud and processes on the cloud. We saw three different types, right? Direct, gateway, and cloud. You can go with the cloud integration pattern and do the processing on the cloud. There, you don't have any restriction on the capacity based on your how big your application is. You can take the capacity for your cloud storage or the processing.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jayanti ma'am. Means a lot coming from you. So yes, ma'am. So the programming, you have languages that are both user friendly, and so you have starting right from GUI. You can just drag and drop. You have starting from that to what you can write with something like C and Java, Python, and PHP. It's quite easy. To start is very, very easy, very friendly. Based on to what extent or how big an application you're building, the complexity of the algorithms will change accordingly. But yes, to start with, it's very, very easy. So for that, we'll have to use the protocols. Now say I have my data in my Raspberry Pi and I want to, or in my ESP, which is the controller, the Wi-Fi controller. And there are free servers like Adafruit.io in which you can send the data and visualize it online itself. So through your Wi-Fi network at home. So again, depending on what you want to do. So putting data to cloud, you're going to be having to publish the information out there. So how to publish? If you just go to, say, for example, the one I recommend is Adafruit, ADAFRUIT.io. Over there, they'll be showing you how you can publish data to the Adafruit server, and from there you can visualize data on that itself. I hope that helps, Bhaskar sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, can you just spell the website name once, sir?
I'll just type it for you, sir. ADA. I'll just share the link 1 second. ADAF.
Yes. Yes.
Adafruit.io. So this is a free service. So when it is free, it also has limitations as to how much information and how frequently you can publish information to your server. So you please make sure that you're following that. Otherwise, the device gets banned for a short period of time. So you can't send data for that short time. So I'll just share the link for all of you on the chat.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So if that's that, so it gives me immense privilege to welcome my good friend Regan. Go ahead with the next part of the presentation. Regan, over to you, please.
Hi Uday, thank you so much for the introduction. I hope you guys can hear me and see the video clearly.
Yes, sir, we can hear you and we can
Okay.
hear video also.
Okay. Uday, great presentation as usual. So good job. So I'll just start off about our team. What do we do? And I'll slowly get into the ventilators. So what we built. So I'll just share my screen now. Okay, I hope you guys can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so very good evening. It's my privilege to speak to audience here today. So we represent this company called Ionic 3DP. So we are part of it, and we manufacture 3D printers. And when it comes to 3D printing, we also do a lot of robotics and IoT projects. So that is where our association with Uday came into place. So this is about our team, and that's me without a mustache. So I don't think it's someone else. So I am the CEO of India Ionic 3DP. So in the beginning, we started as a startup from National University of Singapore, and on the right side, it's Dr. Prahalad Vadakapat. So he's a professor in US. He's very, very famous. I'm pretty sure that some of you might know him. And the first thing is, I am from Hindustan College of Engineering. I graduated out in 2009. And right over at the bottom, you can see that it's Creighton A. Jojo. So he's our mechanical R&D head. And he's from KCG College of Engineering. So I realized that so this presentation is headed for KCG. So I think that some of you might know him if you are from a mechanical background. And we have a very good friend of mine, Mr. Feng Shuming. So he's the chief architect behind some of the very innovative projects, some of the patents that we have. So he is operating from Singapore. So this is a very brief, very small brief about our team. So let me just go on. So these are some of the associations that we have. That we have a lot more. So I don't want to like fill up the slides. So and I'll just quickly go through our focus. So our focus is primarily into 3D printing. We manufacture fuse deposition modeling 3D printers, and we are very proud to also state that we are one of the very few people who also manufacture liquid deposition modeling 3D printers. We have very extensive knowledge on DLP, SLA 3D printers also. Other areas that we focus on is on taking up projects and case studies for in the field of robotics, automation, as well as medical. And The medical, we have gone in quite extensively inside. So I'll just share about the slides a little bit later. So for people who are new into 3D printing, so who don't know much, I'll just kept a very few slides. I'll just quickly go through it. So there are different type of 3D printing. So one is called as 3D printing with plastics. We call them as fused deposition modeling. So this is very common. Most of you would have seen it. And another type of 3D printing is called SLA stereolithography or digital. I think I went through the slides in the previous one, digital light processing technique. I have quite a lot of experience in working on this particular field when I was working for another company called Structo in Singapore. So here you can get very finite, beautiful, high precision parts, which you can never even achieve in any other printing technique. Next one is SLS 3D printing, selective laser sintering. So basically you melt powder with a laser and then you form parts. And the last important part is DMLS, SLM 3D printing, where you can print metal 3D printed parts. So we are currently embarked on this particular project, and we are funded by the government of India in collaboration with Kerala Startup Mission. So we are working on India's first uh, direct metal laser sintering 3D printer. So we can finally print titanium, aluminum parts, end products for machines and products. So I'll just quickly go through again with different parts of 3D printing. So this is called as fused deposition modeling, or typically sometimes they also call as molten material system. So all you have is a very thin strand of plastic, which you just heat it up to a certain temperature and moving in X, Y, Z coordinate system, and you're depositing layer by layer, you can form a 3D model. This is the cheapest and easiest and um, affordable way of doing 3D printing. Of course, the finish is not perfect, but most of the people use this because it's really cost effective. Yeah, and the systems are also pretty cheap. So the next one is liquid deposition modeling 3D printing. So this is pure ceramic. You can print ceramic parts, using clay, China clay. There are various other types of earthenware clay and many other types of materials. You can print it out, and you can finally bake it, to get beautiful finishes. The best part about this is that things which you cannot even make by hand, right? I don't have parts with me to show you. There are some parts which you can never even imagine of making it by hand and continuously replicating it over and over again. So those kind of systems, those kind of parts, you can easily make it through liquid deposition modeling system. So we typically call this as ceramic printer. And we have very good collaboration with Anano City Ceramics Department, and we work with them on formulating different type of materials for various type of customers of ours. So they are also one of our biggest customers. The next one is DLP, or even SLA is pretty much the same. So we do take a 3D model, we slice it, and we convert the image as a black and white image. So this is just pure computer graphics, and we use a projector to project the image onto a basin where it is filled with liquid. So the last image, you can see that the motor goes up and down while the parts are just printed. So you can get very beautiful, high precision parts using DLP printing system. And the next one I would like to talk about is stereolithography. It is something similar to the previous one, but here you can see that a very laser is used, and this mirror is actually used for tilting the axis X and Y coordination, and you can finally print end parts also. So this is mainly used for jewelry type of 3D printing. So we do make all these type of 3D printers, and you know, we do claim that we're experts in it, which we are. Um, so this is powdering system. So this is SLS 3D printing, and you can see that there is a powder onto which this is like a tank on the right side, and where there is an elephant image shown. So a laser is actually hitting onto the platform, and then the mirror will move in X and Y direction. So this actually forms a full final end model. So we don't make 3D printers, but we are which is also the similar concept, but we have a lot of other conditions that we have to worry about, such as the temperature, such as the humidity, the effect of the laser, the powder, the particles that we use. So this is pretty complex, and we are working on it also in collaboration with IIT Madras. So some professors are collaborating with us on this too. So when I talked about ceramic printing, liquid deposition modeling printing, which is over here, I think this is the one. There are very few people in the world who make this type of machine. It is very special. So you can see the final end parts here. Um, you know, craftware and decorative items. You can make with these type of machines. So designs such as the ones you can see on the left side. The made by hand, can be continuously replicated in mass production, only with the help of ceramic 3D printing. And this is also into ceramic 3D printing. I don't want to go too much into this. I'll just quickly case studies. Okay, so this is where we started. This is very special to us, and this is where our whole movement started. Why we jumped into the world of 3D printing. I've been personally working with 3D printing, R&D in 3D printing companies such as Pirate 3D, Structo, all the way from 2014 back in Singapore. And this 2015 event really changed the way how we look at 3D printing. So this happened in the province of Wuhan in China. So this particular kid, he doesn't have a hand. So the problem to solve was how can we use the 3D printing to enable him to get a small hand, as such. So that was the challenge. Sorry, one second. Sorry. So we did a very quick case study on this, and we 3D scanned the model of the patient, a child. He was just 8 years old, and we quickly 3D printed parts, and we made a very simple cable manipulator type of 3D printed arm. So this is the first concept, and you can see that here you can see that the child is able to ride bicycles, even play ball, with his family. It's a very rudimentary kind of basic type of outcome, but it worked. So this is one of our friends back in China. So this is how we started off the whole movement, how we started off with this whole process. I just wanted to, I usually, whichever presentation I go, I always start off with this particular case study because it's really, really special to us. Even though we have many, many advancements that we have done, but this is where it all began for us. The next one that we very commonly use is digital orthopedics. Where you 3D print it, and before the surgery, the doctor is able to understand what is he going to get into, especially the hip bone, hip transplantations. So again, we started off again in Wuhan. That was the very first opportunity that we had got. And from there, we have just expanded to a lot of hospitals in APAC, also in India, in Apollo hospitals and other places too. So the doctor gives us the CT scan files. So we convert the CT scan files. CT scan files is nothing but a bunch of images in a raw format with black and white, in black and white terms. So we have to convert. We have to take all the white pixels of the images, and we have to form a three-dimensional object. Right, and that we call it as STL format, which is then converted over to machine code information, and then it is actually sent for 3D printing. In some places, especially in China, since the place is so wide, we have online cloud platform service where the doctors directly upload the STL files, and then we it is like already like a routine where the 3D prints automatically happen on schedule. So this is something where a cloud service is being used by us, in the field of digital orthopedics. Um, then I would like to come to medical ventilators. Okay, so these are the very common case studies in medical that which we work on. This one, prosthetics, we do it as most of a social enterprise these days. So if anyone wants a robotic arm, a 3D printed arm, we do help them, 3D print it and make their project successful. So the digital orthopedics is a business for us, but not so much in India, but in other places of APAC, it is pretty successful for us also. Then coming on to medical ventilators. So India operations, we started off over a year ago, and we were just focused on making 3D printers. And COVID time, it really opened our eyes. So we found out that people were making too many types of ventilators, and we also wanted to start off with, because we didn't have anything else to do, to be very honest. That was one of the core reasons. Uday knows the entire story about it. We just wanted to start off something, and we were invited by another company called Synergia, which is over here. They are a software technology company based out of Cochin. So in the beginning, we too started off with this consortium where let's build a medical ventilator. And then it was later appended by two more companies, Digital Core, who are specialists in PCB fabrications, and Aruvi, so they are into AI and big data. So we all four of us combined together into making this wonderful product that you can see over here. I'll just go through the how we built it, because I think it is very important to not just see the product, but to see the entire path and how we built this ventilator, and now we are into certifications. So I'll just share you the complete journey. So phase one, in March, when we were approached to start off with medical ventilator, we really had no idea about medical ventilators. We were completely new. We were into other type of machineries and automation. We have done intense automation services for several big companies, but we have never gotten into pure medical, like a ventilator kind of style, where it's going to be really helpful for a patient. So we wanted some kind of adaptation. So we took the first adaptation from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, but we wanted to update it a little bit more. We wanted to make it cloud-based with IoT controls, and we wanted to have a touch screen, and we wanted the product to be very elaborate. Not like other typical ventilators. With just 4 buttons, you can just move the speed and stuff. We wanted something more elaborate. We wanted to make this solution itself as robust and as scalable as possible, so that in the ambulances, we can use this type of solution. So so let me just quickly just show the first video. How did we start off with this? So this is I hope you guys can see the screen. Okay, so if you can see, I'll just scroll it because I think there'll be too much of disturbance. So you can see we did 3D printed. You can see the blue color parts, the black color parts. We just used a simple ambu bag, because ambu bags are used in emergency solutions inside ambulances, even in when the patient is very sick, or even for pediatrics, they use ambu bags as a first emergency care. So we wanted to use just the ambu bag because it can deliver the volume, and you can adjust the intensity, and it's a ready-made proven solution. So we didn't want to invent anything out of the box at the very beginning. So we just used a regular ambu bag solution. So we just wanted to mimic the movements. So this was the very first prototype that we really came out with. Okay, so to just see how the movement and how the traction and everything is going to work. So all the parts are completely 3D printed, as you can see. So this one we kind of adapted it from I think most of you would have seen this video. So this video is from Mahindra, I believe. So this is the very first concept of video that came into the market for emergency care ventilation. Um, sorry. So this was the first video that came out with emergency care ventilators with ambo bags. So we wanted to try several models before we come to a right conclusion. We didn't have a very big team. It was just me and another two more guys here who are mechanical engineers. So I take care of the electronics and the coding. So they do the mechanical part of it. So we just came up with 3D models, 3D designs to just make this concept. So this was the first video, the first product that came out on the market. But I think Mahindra dropped it. They are not continuing it anymore. But we are continuing it. Okay, so I just wanted to showcase that one. So then after the first one, we came up with the second model, second concept where we incorporated slightly powerful motors. We try to mimic the exact same concept as Mahindra, where just one axis just moves in and out, which we got really powerful results. Um, all the electronics were just ready-made open source. We just used Trinamic motor drivers to make the process really smooth. Uday knows this whole step that we went through, so he was guiding us in few stages. So this might not be new to Uday, but I wanted you guys to see it. So this is happening in Chennai in a lab in Velachery. So it was a very rudimentary setup, but we got the concept working, but we could not achieve the right speed that we wanted. So we realized that even Mahindra would be lacking the same approach because we kind of copied the similar solution. So we wanted something more, something more powerful and something more robust, and where we can tune all the parameters of a patient. So we went with, again, all this is 3D printed. You can see all the parts are 3D printed. The bottom plate is actually PETG, and the other pieces are PLA, just pure PLA. Since we are making 3D printers, so we have so many 3D printers lying around in our office, so we started printing in all the machines. The next concept which we came up again is 3D printed, but this time we got it right. Okay. So my cheering voice would have been there because we achieved this result at 6 o'clock in the morning. We were working for like 3-4 days to arrive at the perfect solution. Right, and I think the video frame rate is really slow. So I'll just show you, scroll through. So we achieved all 3D printed again. You can see the red pieces, yellow pieces, blue pieces. Everything is 3D printed. And sorry for the messy table. So we took this concept working, and it was really powerful and very effective. And we could achieve all the parameters which other ventilators were failing. Especially Mahindra and TVS. There were so many other people also. Maruti also were working on. So we really adapted most of the specifications from Massachusetts Institute of Technology because they had an open source initiative going on, and it was pretty powerful. And we just followed their footsteps and ensured that all the parameters are achieved because MIT, they were going in for clinical validations, and they had a panel of doctors. We didn't have so much of money or so much of bandwidth or expertise to have such amount of people with us, so many people with us. So in the beginning, just the three of us, so we were following the specifications as portrayed in MIT. So this was the final solution that we got, and we got it working perfectly. All the parameters we'll be able to tune it, and so I wanted to just showcase this point. So this was really a first victory for us. It really took us quite some time to compare different models of motors, different solutions, and finally, when we arrived at the solution, it was perfect. This is exactly what we were looking for. So then we wanted to start off with the UI. I think there's a picture, but the picture cannot be seen, I think. Okay, there is a picture over here. So we wanted to integrate a very nice display panel to the ventilator. So we used ESP32s. ESP32 is a very standard microcontroller, but it is very powerful, which I realized when I went quite in depth into this project. So it has dual cores. You can run 2 threads parallelly, which is typically not possible in Arduino Uno or Mega or any other type of system. It has Wi-Fi, it has Bluetooth, it is flash memory, one of the highest flash memories you can find in microcontrollers, and it has 2 cores. That's really the powerful feature. So one part of the core, we used it to communicate through the cloud. We had an API engine which was implemented in Node.js. So we just directly sent all the parameters of the ventilator directly to the API engine. And we also had, so from the server, we had a React Native app. So I'm not able to, something similar to this. Okay, so this is the latest version of the app. I wanted to show the primary version of it. So all the information from the cloud, we extracted that information and we showed it as a React Native app. So the whole point of using React Native is that we thought that once it is implemented in React Native, we can port it to any device, whether be it a Mac or iOS or Windows. And it readily use. So that was the whole point in which we went with React Native. But we soon realized that we made a mistake, and then we had to roll back into a native app. But still, we followed the same architecture and the cloud implementation. So is that in a hospital, in front of the nurse's desk, there can be a bigger panel, and all the ventilators inside the hospital can be connected to the server. And the front panel, which is which is on the nurse's office, all the ventilator statuses can be readily updated. And if any patient is finding a difficulty in breathing or any parameter changes, the nurses can immediately notice outside itself. They don't have to sit inside next to the patient to see the problem. So that is the reason why we use this cloud communication setup. And so we were building on that on the side. And we wanted to come with the first working prototype, to showcase to hospitals. And this is the very first machined concept that we made. Earlier we did everything as 3D printed parts, and we kind of brought it out as a very simple solution. Because we adopted this. If you look into our website, which is our we have a very simple style of machine called as Epsilon, which is a very basic rudimentary type of machine. The box styling is something similar to the ventilator design that we made. Okay, so you can see the styling of the box here. So the very first prototype, we built it with the same in the same style, right? But with slightly lesser dimensions. So we wanted to easily carry it around, take it to doctors, showcase demos and stuff. So to be very honest, till this point, we never met a single doctor, and we didn't have enough tools or ideas whether we are achieving all the parameters correct. So till here, we were blind. We were just following all the functionalities of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Mahindra and TVS. and all the parameters, are exactly matching to those. So they had an open source project, and the project was very in depth. So we followed every single step, and we finally achieved the solution. And it was a very good system. Very first prototype was very good. It was working perfectly fine, and we did some modifications here and there, and finally we first went to the first doctor. So when the doctors saw this, they were quite surprised. um, they allowed us to test our first ventilator on a dummy. um, Yeah, so they were explaining about a lot of problems, why ventilators are so expensive, and how can we make this better. And only after this meeting, we really understood that cost is one of the concerns, but there are bigger concerns also. The reusability of the ventilators was one of the other core problems, and parameters. So the parameters that is specified by Mahindra and TVS and MIT, they are not enough. So the doctors needed more. So we had a very good interaction. We went and demoed it to close to 10 hospitals. Some of them were very impressed. Some of them were not. It's fine. We took it up with a pinch of salt, anyways, and we really got the crux of the core issue, and where we need to improve. So that is when only after this we really stepped up the game, and the inventor Synergia team, they came in with a full force, and we started re-implementing the entire solution, in a much better way for the doctors to really get it. So if you look into the picture, the previous one, you see that there's only 4 knobs, so which we call it as tidal volume. Then we increase the speed, IE ratio, and the default hold period. But this is not enough for a ventilator. There are so many critical factors. So there is P, T min, T max, pressure min, pressure max, control pressure. So there are so many critical, crucial factors which we didn't know, which most of them were following. So we took one step forward, and we jumped into it. Okay, so when we got into it, things got really interesting. So we wanted to make a complete end-to-end, ICU style ventilator, complete medical ventilator we wanted to make. And because of the experience we had with pneumatics, for the ceramic printing and stuff, so we went off in a different track, and we made this prototype. So this is a complete, so you can see that. So I don't want like you guys to listen to the whole story behind it. So this is a complete pneumatic type of ventilator, which was very rugged. I built it on a plywood. These are all pneumatic components, pressure sensors, flow sensors. I just packed up what all things that I could find in our office, and I first made a first working concept of a medical ventilator. Of course, I had to buy the sensors from Honeywell, and the solution really worked. The very first prototype that we built, it took a long time. It took us close to 1 to 2 weeks to put it up, everything, put up the electronics, wire up everything. So you can see that this is called a test lung, which is mimics your patient's lungs. So you can see that the test lung is moving up and down. It's expanding up and down. So it is powered through an air compressor, which will be replaced through an oxygen cylinder. So we got this first working concept running. So the moment we got this first working concept running, things became really, really interesting. We had no confidence, to be very honest. None of our team members had any confidence that we could ever build a medical ventilator. But after seeing a solution, this is not the final solution, but after seeing what we could do, you can see that I have actually wired up all the electronics on a plywood, all random stuff. We were spending days and nights, assembling and putting all these pieces up together. It's not a beautiful solution, but this is a working concept prototype, which was built in like 2 weeks. For a ICU emergency style ventilator, we connected the valves, we used relays. We are not using relays anymore, but this is the solution that we got out. So then we quickly realized that let's build a second type of ventilator. So instead, more than continuing, we wanted to continue this also because this can be used in ambulances based on what the doctors were saying. And we also wanted to make a complete end-to-end ICU style ventilator. So that's where we actually started off with I200. So within a month of, again, actually for the pneumatic ventilator, it's just pure coding. It is just pure code, but for the mechanical actuator ventilator, there's a lot of other factors also working. So we quickly started working on with I200 and Y100. So we did both of them at the same time, and we designed our first boxes. At the same time, the software was also being built up by Synergia. I had to pitch in for the firmware side, but they were building a very beautiful app on Android, and all the data was going through the cloud. So we wanted it to be a complete featured end-to-end system. So finally, we built the very first prototype, which was pneumatically actuated. Of first prototype of I200, full version, complete version, and we fitted the boxes. You can see all the beautiful graphs. All this is coming from the cloud, with the data is also being pushed to the cloud. We map every single parameter that's needed: T IE ratio, T hole, peak pressure, min pressure. Every single parameter is being controlled and monitored. We also have a mixing tank, oxygen mixing tank. It is not small effort. I really didn't know. The team didn't know. We don't know still. A lot of factors we still don't know. We are still studying it. We researched. We looked into a lot of other competitors. At times, we even peeked into some competitors' projects. This was a really tough, hard journey for us, but we achieved it. And towards the end, we made two types of machines. One is I200 with an ambu bag system, and I200 with a pneumatically actuated full ICU style ventilator. So this machine, this device, which we are really proud of, is fully capable compared to any other expensive ICU ventilator. So we are currently undergoing certifications, and we just successfully passed one certification test yesterday. I'm really proud of the team. We put in really, really hard efforts for this. And the whole project was started off with crowdfunding. And this is the website. So we use the same style of boxes for I100, I200, and iSave. So you can see that the lights over here. So when the patient breathes, the air in and out, the lights glow, for the attenders to clearly see that the patient is breathing. And then we started off with one more project called iSave. It's a ventilator sharing solution. So one ventilator can be split into multiple types of ventilators. So this also we are currently working on. So currently we are working on 3 different type of ventilators. So I100 is fully complete, which are going for certification. Now we are working on I200 and iSave. So I200 is a bit complex because there are a lot of modes. There are a lot of breathing modes which we learned by visiting hospitals, by talking to doctors. Well, this is a product development phase, and we had to go through this. So over 18 different modes of ventilation are there. So we have to implement all the 18 different versions of mode to ensure that this ventilator is in par with the best ventilators in the market, and then we have to go for intensive testing. So very proud that Inventor 100 passed one certification yesterday. We are still on the process. We are still improving it, and we are still working on it. So this was started off as a crowdfunding project. So many people donated, and we are really thankful, and we are really blessed to have people helping us out. So this is the iSafe solution which the team is working on. I'm not in that particular part. There's some other people who are working in iSafe. iSafe is a collaboration with MIT. This is the one that I was talking about. So MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and our team are collaborating. to build iSave to take it to hospital. So the first clinical trials are beginning in January, mid of January. So that is where we are taking iSave to the market. So I would expect you guys, not expect you, I would request, if you guys are interested, please look into it. We have very beautiful advisors, and Professor Prahlad is here, Mr. Prakash is here, Silji, so he's one of the very leading persons in the team. Mr. Rama is there. So this is our team. So how we started off with the whole project. So this project is done in Kochi. So our team, we travel back and forth quite a bit from Chennai to Kochi for this project. So I think that's it on the ventilator. So one more quick project that I would like to share is yet to start with. That is again in collaboration with Uday, but this time it's more extensive collaboration with Uday. This project is a street light automation for Chennai Metro station. So you can see that all the street lights are here. This is like automation street light. So when a person walks nearby, the light should glow on. And from the control panel, of Chennai Metro, they wanted to control each cluster individually of the street lights, turn on and off, and with detailed analytics and security systems. So this is one of the projects that we are starting off with Chennai Metro, and we also doing Modbus integration with another third-party system, so that all goes through. So you can see that all the devices are going to be attached with the ESP32 module, and all of them are going to send data to the server, whether it's on, whether it's off, how much electricity is consumed. Data such as that is actually being passed to the server, and from the server, using a front-end panel, we can see how much each cluster has consumed, whether there's any failure in any of the street lights, surrounding the Chennai Metro. All this kind of information we can capture, and they can even there's a web page that's going to be built where the authorities of the people who are working for Chennai Metro, they can just log into the screen, they can turn on a cluster, turn off a cluster, set what time the cluster has to turn on, what time the cluster has to turn off, and each of them are going to be attached with a Wi-Fi router. So this is a very interesting project that we have started off with, and I have others too, but I don't want to bore you guys too much. I know that I've already exceeded my time. This is how we are using IoT, and I think I showed in some relevance of how a medical grade system or any other technical system can integrate with IoT, and how IoT can enable the system to go bigger, right? And imagine a hospital having hundreds of ventilators such as this. Each floor, there's a dedicated stations of ventilators, and there's a front-end panel for the doctors to see which they can monitor each and every single patient vital stats, using their control panel, all with the help of Internet of Things, with the help of IoT. A very nice platform. My recommendation: introduce students who are interested in IoT to this beautiful controller called ESP32. I really recommend it. Or ESP8266 also is perfectly fine, but 32 is a bit more powerful. I become evangelist for ESP32 because I've seen its power and what it can achieve. Of course, the final version we might not be we could not go with ESP32. We will have to go with some medical grade microcontroller called such as STM32 from ST Microelectronics. But for our development phase, it was a huge miracle. It really helped us to quickly just wrap up things. And I think that's it for my slide. I think I gave you guys some information. Any questions, please feel free to shoot out to me.
Participants, you have any queries? You can please unmute yourself and ask.
I'm talking from Nigeria. We appreciate the great effort for the in the bringing out a good team model for which is the need of the day in the COVID times. All efforts, different levels of integrations and requests. Just two questions for you, sir. Harik, have you been deployed this model in any hospital, and are there any investors for this particular model to bring up in mass?
You mean which model, ma'am? You mean the first design or the second design? Hello? I, I think your line is breaking. I really
Ma'am,
cannot hear.
your voice is not audible. I think you can pose the question on the chat also.
I have difficulty with the chat box, ma'am. Is it audible, ma'am?
Yeah, now it's
Hello.
okay.
Is it audible now?
Yeah, it's audible now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about like after so many efforts, you have come out with such a great model, taking the initiative to the society, and great work done, sir. Have you gone for the deployment, sir, in different hospital where is need of ventilators?
Yeah, actually, there was a recent fire accident of Daman ventilators in Gujarat. I don't know if you heard about the news on that. So it happened over 2 months ago, I believe. So till then, the Indian government was very active and very proactive. They were granting licenses left and right. So for a ventilator within 1 month of testing, which is not correct. You cannot build a ventilator in just 2 months or 3 months and then directly just go into a hospital and just put it on a patient's face. You know, who are going to be depends on this ventilator because you're manually forcefully injecting air and you're just pumping out air. So they were like granting licenses left and right, and there were a lot of grants available, spendings are happening. And Daman ventilator was one of the heart of by Jyoti CNC, one of the ventilators in Gujarat. So a huge fire accident happened, and in the ICU. So a lot of doctors started complaining and stuff. So the entire process became the government took a back step behind it, and they said that Indian Medical Council has to be approved, ISO certifications needs to be availed, CEFCC all needs to be availed, ISO stamp must be done. Close to 5 to 6 testing agencies must attest your product prior to even getting into ICMR. So it is not a very easy step to just directly get into hospital. We have a close to 8 hospitals working very close with us. We are tie up with a lot of doctors also, private doctors. Even Velur CMC hospital also we have tied up. So we are all working with the doctors. A lot of testing is going on. Without testing, without intensive testing, without ICMR permission, we cannot go into the hospital. We cannot do deployments yet. So all the ventilators which have not got ICMR certifications and have been deployed, they have been backtracked. They have been backrolled. So we expect maybe another 3 to 4 months, we should be finished our certifications.
So haven't you tried for investors, sir, for coming out with these models in mass production?
We do have investors. So the moment they saw us with I200 solution, which was a very powerful solution, people started coming in. So we are currently backed by some really powerful people. Yeah, so we are going really fast as possible. Our team is really big now. So earlier we are very small, but the team also has expanded quite a bit.
Great job, sir. Best wishes. Yes,
Thank you.
for good social.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other queries? Yes. Thank you, Uday sir. Your session was very interesting and interactive. I would like to extend my thanks to Mr. Regan sir too. Your presentation was really good. And happy to know that our alumni is also part of your team. And I
I'm also an
appreciate.
alumni too. I'm
Okay,
also
sir.
from Hindustan. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. And I thank both the speakers for their effort and thanks for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.